welcome back. Now remember, on these, we are going to be looking at both lessons 3 and 4. And because of that, you'll have a little bit of extra time to complete these notes, but I still do expect them done by the date that we wrote in our planner. So you'll notice that Chapter 6, Lesson 3 has a different color background than Chapter 6, Lesson 4. So make sure you're always in the right place, okay? And as per usual, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably not right. So always double check, all right? So we're going to be looking at Chapter 6, Lesson 3 first. And we're going to be looking at the fact of, or some of the ideas about the development of Judaism and some of how those beliefs shape life. That's one of our big essential questions, is how does religion shape society? So it served as the basis of daily activity for ancient Israelites. Everything was based around religion, and many of these traditions continue today. So while they were in Babylon and the Jewish people were in exile, Jews began to meet at synagogues, or small houses of worship, temples almost. Their holy day was called the Sabbath, and it still is today, which lasts from sundown Friday to nightfall Saturday. So it's a 24-hour period from nightfall to nightfall, Friday to Saturday. And many Jews still go to their temple on Friday evening, just like many Christians might go to church on Sunday morning. Now, many Jews returned to Judah in 538 BC, like we saw on our last set of video notes, but remember that some were still spread all over the. Now, just like Christianity and Islam, the Hebrews are considered a people of the book, meaning they have a holy book that is important to them. The Hebrew Bible contains all sorts of different writings and can be divided into basically 3 categories. The first is the Torah, and the Torah is considered the most important of the Hebrew Bible. Please put a star by the Torah. It's the first 5 books, and these books are also in the Christian Bible. It's the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are also the first 5 books of the Christian Bible. Now, the Torah, unlike the Christian Bible, is never printed by computers. It's only ever handwritten on scrolls. So it could take years and years for one of these to be copied, but many Jews believe that the word of their God is so holy that it should never be just written by machine. It should always be done by hand. The other parts include the prophet books, and these are the messages of God given from those prophets. Those are those messengers that we talked about in lesson 2. And so these are separate as well. And then the writings are the books of history, poetry, and everything else, wisdom, that kind of flesh out the Hebrew Bible. So all 3 of these are part of the Hebrew Bible, but that Torah is by far the most important. Everything else adds depth. Now, just like in other ancient societies, the family life was very, very divided among young and old, male and female. So if you were the father, you were considered the leader of the household, just like Abraham was considered the leader of his people, or Moses or David or Solomon. So you were considered to be in charge if you were the father. If you were a boy, if you were a son, your education in religion and your job, trade, was very, very important. So many Jewish people place a very high focus on education, but only for boys. Boys would spend hours and hours studying the Torah and the other writings of Hebrew leaders, as well as learning how to do all sorts of different jobs. The mothers were responsible for taking care of the children and the home. And this was something that was kind of seen as the correct place for them to be. And then if you were a daughter, you were educated at home in religion and how to run your household, how to be a good mother, how to raise children, cook, clean, all of that. So these roles were very, very clearly defined, and everybody kind of stayed in their lane. Of course, today, many Jewish people, women, for example, have careers outside of the home, and boys and girls are educated more equally in many Jewish families. But in some more conservative Jewish families, these traditions still hold strong. Now, many Jewish people also choose to follow certain dietary restrictions. That means they have limits around what they do and don't eat. Jewish law told ancient Jews what they could and couldn't eat. By following the laws related to food, ancient Jews believed they were showing obedience to God. Many Jews today follow these laws and eat what's called kosher food, or food prepared to these specific dietary laws. And it covers everything from animals being killed a certain way to foods not being allowed to be eaten at the same meal. So if we take a look at our list over here, boop, boop, kosher foods might include meats that are killed a certain way, and usually that way ensures that they've been killed humanely or kindly. Certain birds, fish, meat that is eaten separately from dairy. So no bacon cheeseburgers for somebody who is following the rules of kosher. And there is, no pork products. So pork, camel, rabbit, reptiles. So if you are an observant Jewish person and you follow the rules of kosher eating, you do not eat bacon, you do not eat ham, anything made from a pig, or any of the other animals that you mention here, crab, lobster, octopus, those sorts of things. Now, just like any other belief system, some people who are Jewish follow these expectations during everyday life. Some follow it maybe just for special holidays or just on special days like the Sabbath. So there's a wide variation among who follows what and when. And some Jewish people don't keep kosher at all. They don't follow these rules at all. So it really very much today depends on the individual. But in the ancient world, they would have been kind of all on the same page here. Now, here's a hot question for you. Today, observant Jews celebrate many religious holidays or holy days throughout the year that celebrate big events in Jewish history. Take a look at one of these events, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Hanukkah, and take a look at the time that it's celebrated, the length it's celebrated for, the reason, and some of the customs. And then choose a holiday that you celebrate. So maybe you celebrate Christmas, for example, and compare and contrast it with one of the holidays here. Think about the different kinds of food that are eaten. Think about how long it lasts, different ways that we celebrate, or even the reason for the holy day. Now, Passover, guys, is really important because this is a holiday that celebrates that Exodus, okay? And they are being passed over from that last plague. So let's keep that in mind there. But during this hot question, make sure you tell me how your holiday is similar to or different from one of the Jewish holidays. Now we're ready to move on to lesson 4. So we're going to look at the Jews in the Mediterranean world here. And the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, experienced many significant changes or important changes under Greek and Roman rule. Now here's a familiar face, Alexander the Great. In 331 BC, he conquered much of Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean world. So we can see his empire here. We're used to this map. We studied it a lot in chapter 8. We know that Alexander admired Greek culture, wanted to spread it around. Now he allowed the Jews living in Judah, in the promised land here, to stay there. But many Jews still lived over here in Babylon from when King Nebuchadnezzar had captured them, or in other areas of the Mediterranean. This spreading of Jewish people is called the diaspora. Okay, so they are spread. That word spread is kind of right in there. So notice they go to all different parts of Europe, North Africa, and the Mediterranean. Did you know that diaspora is a Greek word that means scattered? And groups of Jews settled all over Alexander's empire, whether it was Egypt, Spain, Europe, even into what's now currently England and France. Okay, so all over. Now, the Greeks had some conflict here, especially after Alexander's death. We know in 323 BC, Alexander dies, okay? And we know from chapter 8 that his generals divide the empire into the 4 kingdoms. Now, depending on which kingdom Jewish people lived in, they could expect very different treatment from the people and the rulers there. For example, in Judah, that area where Jerusalem is, they required the Jews to worship the Greek gods and goddesses, the king that took over there. So we know that a monotheistic religion is going to have a problem with being told what religion or what gods they should worship, because we know the first commandment of those 10 says worship no other gods. So a group of Jews known as the Maccabees led a rebellion against the Greek king. They said, we are done with this. We are not putting up with this anymore. We are going to be like King David and fight the big guy here. So there was a huge war, and it lasted 3 years. By 164 BC, the Maccabees captured the temple in Jerusalem, clear out all the statues of Greek gods and goddesses that the Greek king had put there, and rededicate it to worshiping the Hebrew God. So they clear out all the statues of Athena and Zeus and all of that. I mean, how rude for somebody to come take over your temple and put statues of their own gods there. And they say, no, this temple was built for our Hebrew God. That's what's going to stay. So the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah celebrates these events. During this siege, when the Maccabees are capturing the temple in Jerusalem, the story goes that they were holed up, they were kind of waiting for reinforcements, and they only had enough oil to light the lamp for one night to be able to see and defend themselves. And through a miracle, the oil in the lamp lasted for 8 nights. So today, Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah in remembrance of a miracle they believed happened when their God provided them with enough oil to defend themselves and last for 8 whole nights. So if you'll notice, this is called a menorah, and it represents, there's one candle, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this middle candle represents that original oil. Okay, so this is a holiday that Jews still celebrate today, and it usually falls right in November and December. So oftentimes it kind of gets lumped in with Christmas, but it has a very different meaning. Now we know after the Greeks come the Romans, and we haven't talked much about the Romans yet, but we know that they eventually take over all of Alexander's empire and expand it even further. So in 63 BC, the Romans conquered Judah and renamed it Judea. They were led by powerful generals who controlled most of the Mediterranean lands. Jews started to have many different views about how to practice their religion and how to handle the Romans. You'll notice these dates are getting smaller and smaller. We are counting down to the birth of the historical figure of Jesus Christ, who is going to play a big role in both Jewish and Christian history. So the closer we get to that date, the smaller we're going to see these numbers happen. So now we have the Jews dealing with another group in control, the Romans. So there were 4 main groups of different types of Jews who had different ideas of how they should handle the Romans. The first one were the Pharisees. They were very educated. These are the people who taught in the synagogues. They were the teachers and kind of the really educated people. And they stressed that we should follow the laws, and that the reason that the Jewish people were being punished with the Romans is that they weren't being obedient enough. So they thought the Romans should be resisted peacefully. They didn't like the Romans, but they said, you know what? We are going to resist them peacefully. So here's the Pharisees right here. Oops. Pharisees. We had the Sadducees, who were families who over time had become very wealthy. And in fact, let's make a little $sign in the S for Sadducees. And these were the wealthy, noble families. They said, hey, let's cooperate with the Romans. It'll go much easier if we do, and we'll all just get along, and these are the guys in charge now, so we should just deal with it. The Essenes were a group who broke away from the temple in Jerusalem, and they said, you know what, we don't even want to be part of this whole deal. We're going to go live in the desert, and we're just going to spend our lives fasting and praying for God to remove these Romans who had all of these different gods and were very, very polytheistic and who disagreed with the Jewish way of doing things. So we've got the Pharisees who say, hey, we don't have to like them, but we should be peaceful about it. The Sadducees who favored cooperation with the Romans. And the Essenes who said, we are just going to go live in the desert and be hermits and do our own thing. The Zealots, our fourth group, though, were very politically active. They wanted to fight for their freedom against the Romans. They said, the only way that we're going to get rid of the Romans is if we fight them, just like we did the Greeks. And so all of these different groups are kind of disagreeing with how they should handle the Romans being in control. Think about if you lived in ancient times and you were from a Jewish family, which group of ideas would you agree with the most? You've got the Romans in charge, they're taking over, they're kind of trying to enforce their ways of doing things. Who do you think has the right idea about how to handle them? All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember that these are due Monday, both lessons 3 and 4. Get them all done, and you'll be on the right track. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Make good choices. Love you. Bye.